Well, do you see the difference? There's a bit of difference. Anyway, kind of a slowish week in terms of my everyday as Christmas parts coming in the mail process, whereas only one major thing came in, which was the front fairing. So this is the Paolo Tex front fairing for Monsters, and like about 90% of my ill-conceived projects, I take a look at something online, get all excited about it, and think, I can make that fit. And in this case, I think I can. Nothing ever bolts on that easily, but in this case, with a little bit of work with the Dremel and some welding on some tabs and that sort of thing, I think I can make it work. So this was originally designed for a liquid-cooled S4 Monster, so there is a lot of open space here, but the kit comprised the upper fairing, a bunch of brackets here, which a lot of them I'm not going to need to use, and that piece of Lexan that you can see on top of that Ducati maintenance manual from LT Snyder out of Desmo Times, that's the windscreen. So all it is a cut little piece of thin Lexan. Same thing they make aircraft canopies out of, very flexible, but certainly not some fancy oven formed acrylic. So when you line up the bolt holes here and the Lexan screen, it gets a little bit of a bubble here, but a bit disappointed in that. I thought for the price I paid for the fairing, something better would come along. So at this point, of course, it's making things mate. So I'm modifying the bracket to work with the Ducati Headstock bracket rather than this clamp-on one that came with the kit. Lovely piece of engineering, and it might be able to be used on something else, but I might as well make use of the headstock bracket anyway. So I'm going to be welding some steel plate onto the bracket and bolting it up. Some spacers will be needed to be made and that sort of thing. So, but of course the first thing I needed to do is to try to get it to fit to the frame, and I guess Monster frames aren't as wide at the front as superbike frames, even though engine bolts are narrower, whatever. So I just did trim some stuff back here with the Dremel and followed a contour. I'll tidy that up with some sandpaper, and this is how it looks from the front. So it's lined up properly left and right, although I goofed on this hole a bit. It hits the rear of the fairing at an angle, so my Sharpie marker was off a bit, so I'll have to fill that and then re-drill the hole. But like most racers, I've spent a lot of my life inhaling fiberglass resin fumes, so that won't be a big deal. But I've kind of got it mocked up with this to get a sense of how it fits. And again, the same on this side, just some contouring of the fairing so that it fits up flush, and we'll smarten it up with some sandpaper towards the end. So not a bad finish. It's rough, so it'll need to be sanded down and use some filler and primer when it's painted. But so it kind of looks neat, I think. I can use these tabs here to come up with another fairing mount, I think, and just some bent steel or aluminum angle, and it should be fairly straightforward. It seems symmetrical, which is good. A lot of these small production fairing pieces, they oftentimes come out of the mold a bit crooked, and just with a good old eyeball test, the center of the windscreen lines up with the center of the fuel cap. With that light adjustment on the bolt hole on the left, we'll get that to line up, and the fairing ears seem fairly symmetrical as well. So it was designed around the liquid cooled one, so big gaping maw where a radiator would go, but again, not a bad idea, ducting more cool air towards the cylinder heads. Yeah, so like I said, there'll be some final adjustments going on. The one thing about drilling one bolt hole or drilling two and then filling one is that you can always make those adjustments to make sure everything's nice and straight with the old eyeball test before you start primering and painting. Yeah, I guess the only other thing is that the monster loom came in, and so I went through every piece of it here and labeled all of the fittings and connections. Some differences, like this is a relay block, and it didn't come with a relay block, and Ducati no longer sells these new. So I found this one, for example, in Greece, and it's being shipped out. And this is a GM relay for the turn signal that might work, might not. I've got the proper Ducati one coming in from the States. So everything's almost identical. If I do put the battery under the seat, which I'm thinking more and more about, you know, these wires will need to be extended. You know, again, the ground wire, this is the ground to the engine case, and then, you know, all of these ground wires here crimped together onto this bracket here, so these will need to be extended as well. The coils are different. Side stand switch has already been soldered together by the guy who had this bike previously, so that's a fairly straightforward Ducati trick. And yeah, so vertical coils. So whereas with my coils there's a nice little Deutsch type of plug-in, this has these clip-on ones, so I'll cut and splice the other ones out. I'll have to make sure to use the right wire. I'm assuming brown with the white tracer is a ground, but I better double check that, or at least make sure that the wires are going to the right spot. But yeah, other than that, the 2 years that the Monster 900 IE was in production, it used almost identical looms and the same ECU plug as the 900 SS. So I guess if you're ever making your own cafe racer project and want to get rid of this horrible mess, you can switch to that if you can find one, because they're hard to track down. Anyway, that's the update for this week.